Hi everybody, thanks for joining us for another Facebook Live event this Thursday morning. We're in our offices again because today is the start of another hunting season, so all of our preserves are closed. So they're going to be closed until Sunday, so then they'll open back up again on Monday. And then the following weekend they're going to be closed next weekend as well. So today I am going to show you guys how to add to your nature journal. A lot of people keep nature journals as a nice way to, well, spend some time outside and kind of make record of some of your observations. So I really like keeping a nature journal because it's so fun to kind of look back through your nature journal at the end of the year, especially right now. You know, it's getting cold and you can look at your nature journal and kind of flip back and see, oh, what did you see this summer or this spring? And it's a good way to kind of recap the year. So lots of people will do their nature journals, just kind of write down some of the things that they see. This summer I saw a rusty patch bumblebee, so I sketched a little rough rusty patch bumblebee. Saw some cedar waxwings. Looks like I saw them in October. And something I like to do is make a few little really rough notes next to some of my sketches. I wanted to show you guys a really rough sketch just to show you that you don't need to make them very perfect. I like to write down a few little things about some key ID features, maybe where I saw them, bird feeder, backyard, or maybe what they're eating too. Niger thistle seed. So just kind of a fun little thing to see. At the end of the year, you can kind of flip back through your nature journal and see what you saw throughout the year. Kind of cool. And keep it on your coffee table and let everybody else kind of flip through your observations too. So today, I'm going to show you one way to add to your nature journal. Let me fix my little microphone here. Is we're going to paint a little landscape for your nature journal. So the picture I have here on my computer screen is actually of Casper Bluff. You can see this is the overlook with the picnic table on it. And right at the bottom of this hill is the Mississippi Wildlife Refuge. Here's the big cottonwood to the north. And if you've ever been out there before, you know that right over here is a trail that kind of heads right down and you can follow it all the way to the Thunderbird. So today we're going to do a little watercolor sketch of this scenery right here. So I have here some little watercolor paper, and I like to put tape on my paper because I like to leave a lot of white space around my painting. And now we're not going to do anything too complicated. Watercolors are a nice way of kind of teaching you how to be okay with mistakes, or I wouldn't even call them mistakes, just whatever happens is supposed to happen. So the first thing that we're going to do is we'll start to sketch out the image here and kind of like a paint by number. So I'm going to start with this tree here on the right. I'll put in that tree over here, just a really rough shape right over there. And the nice thing about sketching things in nature is that it doesn't have to be perfect. So here's another little bush here on the left. So that's this little, well, it's trees kind of in the foreground. And then let's draw my little hill here. Kind of comes to a peak just left of center. And then it goes back down over here. And then you can see in the background here, there's a few little hills way back on the horizon. So let's sketch those. Kind of have to do this at a funny angle. And then there's a few little hills here right in the middle ground. So let's just kind of do one rough little hill right there. And then up here in the foreground, you can see there's some patches of red, patches of yellow, patches of green, mostly green. So let's just designate this as our prairie area. There's a little bit of red that kind of comes in off to the side here. And there's a little yellow patch here, a little yellow patch there, and we'll call this here green. So now I'm not going to label these little areas by color, but if you want to, if you think that will help you kind of remember what color goes where, that's okay too. I have my reference image here in front of me, so I'll just use that. And the first thing we want to do, I always start with my sky because I like to start in the background and kind of work my way up. I also like to start with the lighter or softer colors and then work towards my darker colors. That's because if you put a dark color down, it's hard to fix it once it's already dark. So you can see I just put on my paper just plain water with no color in it right here. Now I'm going to add some blue. And it doesn't have to be perfect. We're just going to put it in there real quick. Kind of go down around my horizon. And it's a little darker up near this area here. So I'm just going to put a little bit more blue there. And you can see it's already starting to blend in there, which is really nice. Okay, so now that we have our sky, I'm going to start with my other light color. Let's do green. So I know this tree here is pretty green. And this tree here looks green too. Now it's going to get a little darker, but for now, that light green will do just fine. And then this hill here is pretty green as well. And our hill way in the back over here, that's actually going to be kind of a darker blue. So we know those trees back there are green, but we're going to paint them blue because they look blue. They look like a color of blue. And that's just because the atmosphere makes things look like darker when they're off in the distance. And I'm going to do kind of a sharper edge right at the top of those trees. And so I got a little blue into my tree over there, but that's okay. You can kind of smudge it out, or you can leave it too. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then this here is another green hill, but it's kind of a darker green. So let's get out our darker green. There's kind of a darker green there. And then in our foreground here, there is a lot of green in the prairie up here. So let's do a lot of this green, and then we'll come back and do our reddish areas and yellow areas. So I know that's pretty green there. That's green. Put some green up here. Kind of going around my red areas. Actually. And then let's come in and do our yellow, because yellow is one of our lighter colors, and it's always easier to come back and do a darker color if you need to, but it's not easy to do a yellow if you need to. So let's just do some red. We're going to do red in a few spots because it kind of looks like there's some red here, there's red there. We'll just kind of let the colors bleed together a little bit. Okay, that looks pretty good. And let's see, we're not quite done yet. We have to make our trees a little darker. Remember our trees here, They are pretty dark relative to this green. They are much darker green than this foreground hill. So let's use a little bit darker green there. We can just kind of really roughly put it in there. We don't need to make it perfect. I'll do that one just like that. Sometimes I like to let the paper be a little bit more damp and then put a little dark color in there and just kind of let it bleed, move around. And one last thing I need to do is put in our shadows. So we have a pretty rough sketch or rough background already of our landscape. Now we need to kind of put in some details. So up here on the image, you can see that the trunk here is pretty dark and there's a lot of little dark patches, almost black, and same over here. So there's a lot of really dark patches and you can see them here in these middle ground too. So I'm going to put in some of these dark patches and I'm just going to use straight black and let it kind of bleed into the green a little bit. So sometimes when I kind of get down to these details, I use a smaller brush too. Just a few little dots make our landscape a little bit more interesting and smudge it around a little bit. Okay, so I think I like a little bit more yellow here. As I see on our image, there's actually more yellow in our image than I thought there was. And there's actually a little bit more red too. Kind of some more red up around this area, right on the edge. And we're almost done. Let's make our background hills a little bit darker. I put a little dark green over top of those blue hills in the back. Okay. All right, I think that looks pretty good. And now you can see this is just really rough. And that's kind of how watercolors are sometimes. If you're an expert, I'm not an expert, but if you're an expert, you could really probably dive into some of these details a little bit more. And I bet you would have a really beautiful nature journal if you practiced a lot. So this is probably my favorite part, is removing the tape after you painted everything. We have our nice clean edges. And there we go. There's Casper Bluff. Now the goal here is to just like your painting. Whatever it looks like, I hope you like it. So now what I like to do is I like to label where I'm at. So I'm going to put Casper Bluff down here. And I'm going to put today's date, December 3rd, 2020 now. There we go. And you could send this to folks or keep this in your nature journal, and you can look back on your fond memories of being at Casper Bluff in the summertime when it's cold in the winter. So there you go. That is one thing you can do to add to your nature journal is little watercolor paintings. So Thanks for joining us today. I should thank our sponsors, the First Community Bank of Galena, Apple River State Bank. You guys have been great sponsors to us, and we appreciate your support. So if you could, support them and join us again next week. Next week, we will be out at the Gramercy Park out in East Dubuque to learn about their new project going on. So thank you, everybody, for joining us, and take care.